And there's not going to be no killing without killing. With all due respect, definitely not going to be any killing without killing.
It's a case that's captured national headlines.
We have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause.
You see me, I've been true to my colors forever, green and gold.
But he has the evidence he needs on the tapes.
And when you don't respect me, I'm gonna spank your ass.
What down, family? It's your boy SNTV, back at y'all with another International Stepperz. And this episode is going to be about none other than Soledad Thomas, aka Itchy Man. Itchy Man comes from the notorious West Baltimore projects called the George B. Murphy Homes. In the 80s and the 90s, the Murphy Homes were like a stronghold for stick-up kids and drug dealers. It was also very dangerous because it had a lot of drug addicts. Most of them were addicted to heroin. The Murphy Homes was a public housing complex comprised of 15 acres of low-rise townhouses, playgrounds, and basketball courts, centered on 4 14-story high-rises. The towers contained 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments strung along central hallways. The Murphy Homes were located on Hoffman and Argyle. The projects were so notorious that it would eventually earn the name the Murder Homes. Most of the children that were growing up in West Baltimore around the time, specifically the ones that came out of Murphy Homes, only had a couple routes that they can go. It was either sell drugs, rob, murder for hire, or box. And maybe about 1% of those people actually boxed and made it out. For everybody else, they really could see no way out. So they looked up to the drug dealers and the killers for guidance. The crack era would breed some of the most notorious people that the city of Baltimore had ever seen. After the 80s would usher in the crack era, Baltimore would become 10 times more dangerous because now there was an open market for crack cocaine, in which before there was only heroin. Now there would become way more fight for territory and way more addicts, more trash to sweep up. The city of Baltimore would become overwhelmed and ridden with crime. And Murphy Homes, for one, would be exploited by the drug dealers, the robbers, and also people outside the community.
This was the scene outside the Murphy Homes high-rise public housing complex yesterday when this van pulled up and began distributing free cigarettes.
There you go. Oh, no. Oh, buddy, please, no picture.
Is it illegal?
No picture, please. No picture.
You with the company here, right? It is.
Let me see it.
What's the problem?
Huh?
What's the problem?
What you doing, man? Man, take the picture. Man, they don't want to hear that, man. Action, man. What you do this for, man? See, you didn't do that, man.
But once the employees of Lorillard, makers of Newport and other brands, saw our cameras, they stopped giving out the samples. And that made many in the crowd angry with us. So angry we had to leave.
It's killing us. It's killing us. But they're going to give it to us free. And we're going to run to it. There's no doubt because we're looking at something free.
Lorillard company officials were not available to comment about the reasons they target poor communities to give away free samples. But American Lung Association officials say it's an act of desperation.
You have 434,000 deaths a year. You have 1.5 million people who are quitting smoking a year. And therefore, you've got an industry that is struggling to make profits and to keep the profit level high.
And there's something else at work. Even cigarette company executives admit that in tough economic times like these, people smoke more cigarettes and drink more alcohol, especially in hard-hit areas like the inner city. And people here say the lure of free cigarettes is just too much to turn down.
It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. It's just like drugs. It's just like drugs. It's just like, here's some dope, but it's illegal. It's killing us, killing the black people, I guess. I mean, because it's bad for your health.
They already gave me one pack. I went in the store to get a pack of cookies. I came back out, they handed me another pack of cigarettes. I said, what y'all trying to do, kill me?
It does pull people and it does continue to enforce the addiction.
So while deaths from lung cancer continue to hit hard in the black and poor communities, cigarette companies continue to target the young, the vulnerable, and the poor. Nat Harrington, WBAL, TV 11 News.
We'd like to add that dispensing free cigarettes is not illegal as long as they are not given to minors.
Itchy Man's life of crime will begin in his late teens. Back in the early 90s, the city of Baltimore was just as dangerous as any other city in the U.S. And Itchy Man was breeded right there in the middle of a war zone. He would start off by robbing people. His robberies would get more aggressive after people would begin to refuse to give up their property. Sometimes Itchy Man would have to shoot his victims. After getting used to robbing people and shooting people, he would eventually graduate to killing people, and then he would graduate to murder for hire. On March 14th, 1996, Itchy Man, who was going by the name of DeAndre, or Dre at the time, would end up on the radar of the Baltimore police when a guy that went by the name of Alfonso Rogers would end up being shot with a shotgun. Allegedly, Alfonso Rogers was sold some fake drugs. He went back to complain about it. Itchy Man didn't like this. He would end up with a slug in his chest. Itchy Man would end up being charged with attempted murder. Then 2 days later, on March 16th, 1996, Itchy Man would end up in a gun battle at the Shake and Bake Family and Fun Center. He would end up shooting 7 people. He would end up being charged with 7 counts of attempted murder. After the shootout that occurred at the skating rink, Solithal would begin going by the name of Itchy Man. Everybody started calling him Itchy Man because they said he had an itchy trigger finger. There were a lot of killers in the city of Baltimore, but what separated Itchy Man from everybody else was that Itchy Man would shoot you anywhere. It didn't matter. And 9 times out of 10, he was gonna beat the case. Itchy Man's next run-in with the police would come on September 1st, 1996, when he would get into it with his baby's mother, Terrell Moses. She was allegedly assaulted. Itchy Man would be charged with that. On September 14th, 1996, a guy that went by the name of Antoine Lowe would end up being shot 6 times while he was shooting dice. Itchy Man would be charged with attempted murder for that. On November 2nd, 1996, a guy that went by the name of Raymond Fortune would end up being severely beaten and robbed. He would end up getting one of his lips ripped off and one of his eyeballs knocked out in a beating that he would endure from a ceiling fan and a bat. Itchy Man will be charged with attempted murder for that. He would also be charged with possession of a handgun. After the Raymond Fortune incident, detectives will decide that it was time to take Itchy Man off the streets once and for all. But little did they know, it wouldn't be so easy. Itchy Man once astounded police by scaling a public housing high-rise to elude capture, climbing from balcony to balcony until he disappeared into a vacant 7th-floor apartment. For 5 hours, 50 officers and FBI agents searched the 14-story Murphy Homes building that November afternoon in 1996. They shut down the nearby US 40 and Martin Luther King Boulevard during the search. Somehow, Itchy Man slipped away. A detective says he later claimed he hid in a trash chute. He would end up being arrested November 27, 1996 in Prince George's County on dozens of charges. On October 8th, 1997, Itchy Man will be acquitted on a case with Antoine Lowe after a detective would testify that Lowe identified Thomas as being his shooter. Antoine Lowe would end up recanting his testimony. On January 22nd, 1998, Itchy Man would end up entering a plea deal in which he would only get a 2.5-year sentence. He would plead guilty on the case with Raymond Fortune to robbery with a deadly weapon and possession of a handgun. Most of his other charges would be dropped. Itchy Man had beat the system, at least for the moment. With such a light sentence, Itchy Man would be back on the streets in no time, and he would go right back to work. On December 23rd, 1998, Ellis Johnson is selling drugs when he is robbed and shot 4 times. Thomas, Samuel Warren, and Carlos Williams are charged with attempted murder. Ellis Johnson, A lanky 16-year-old was roaming the 1400 block of Argyle Avenue around the corner from his home, peddling $5 hits of crack cocaine. Shortly before 9 p.m., he was at the corner of Argyle and Lafayette when 4 guys approached him. He recognized 3 of them, Itchy Man, Samuel Sambo Warren, and Carlos Williams, a former classmate at Booker T. Washington Middle School and Itchy Man's nephew. Johnson said Itchy Man grabbed him by the jacket and pressed the gun to the back of his head. The unidentified man went through his pockets and pulled out money. "Yo, he only got $9, Johnson recalled him saying. At that, Johnson added, Itchy Man said, "Where's the stuff?" and said, "Take me where it's at." Johnson said he led Itchy Man and Warren halfway up the block to a trash-filled cardboard box on the sidewalk and pulled out a brown paper bag containing about 40 green top vials of crack cocaine. "Ready," he called it. Itchy Man wondered aloud if Johnson would snitch, then shot him in the left leg 3 times. After Johnson fell, he took a 4th round in the right foot. As the wounded teen crawled towards the steps of the nearby house, Itchy Man walked down the street and started laughing. The group then headed to Lafayette Avenue and on toward Freeman Avenue. 15 minutes after Ellis Johnson was shot, another man that went by the name of Lewis Middleton was shot and killed. There was a dude on a payphone at the corner of Fremont Avenue and Linville Street. It was a convicted drug dealer, Carlos Rodriguez, who's known to Baltimore police and prosecutors as Lewis Middleton. He was talking to his mother in New York. Francis Bernard Smith was nearby and heard a command to Middleton, "Kick it out." Middleton handed over the money. Itchy shot him like twice, Williams told police. The dude fell to the ground. Itchy stood over the top of him and shot him some more, another 4 or 5 times, he recalled. The trio fled to a house several blocks away. Itchy Man, Samuel Warren, and his nephew Carlos Williams will be charged with this murder as well. This was the case that they thought that they would win because they actually had a witness that was on the scene. That witness was Carlos Williams, which was Itchy's nephew. He would give a recorded statement about everything that happened. The only problem was the prosecutors didn't act fast enough and missed the deadline on the single trials, hereby charging all 3 of them at the same time. And Carlos Williams' confession would be deemed almost irrelevant because the jury never sided with snitches. Itchy Man would actually be acquitted of this case in April of 2000. This was a case that actually showed the incompetence of the prosecutor's office, and it highly upset detectives. They actually had an eyewitness and the murder weapon, yet still no conviction. The night Carlos Williams, which was Itchy Man's nephew, was caught, he was caught with the same weapon that was used to kill Lewis Middleton. People will begin to wonder, how was it that Itchy Man would have so much evidence against him, but yet he still would go free every time? Then the questions will come up on whether the police were involved in some of these crimes themselves. By the summer of 2000, Itchy Man had put the most serious charges behind him, but he still faced accusations of assaulting 2 women who, according to court records, are mothers of his children. Lakeisha Berry's jaw was broken January 22nd, 1999. About 24 hours after Carlos Williams was arrested with the Taurus 9, Terrell Monique Moses was choked into unconsciousness and suffered a broken cheekbone 6 days later. On August 18th, 2000, Itchy Man was brought to trial on those charges. The women were not there, and Lipson, the prosecutor, told Judge Holland that they could not be found, so the cases were shelved and Itchy Man was released. On September 9th, 2000, Latrell Gross is shot 6 times and dies. Itchy Man and Alfonso Harper are charged. Court records show that police and prosecutors believe that Gross had shot Itchy Man in a gunfight 2 weeks earlier, and that the ambush of Gross was a continuation of a feud. Itchy Man had walked into the emergency room at Maryland Shock Trauma Center the night of August 24th, 2000, with a grazed bullet wound of the chest, claiming he didn't know who shot him at the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Martin Luther King Boulevard. About the same time, a 16-year-old boy was shot to death nearby. A homicide detective was in the emergency room investigating. When he learned that another shooting victim, Itchy Man, was there, he had the crime lab swab the wounded man's hands for gunshot residue. The test was positive, suggesting Itchy Man had recently fired a gun. No one was charged in the killing of the teen, although documents suggest that police believe he had been caught in the crossfire and that Gross had fired the fatal shot. On August 24th, Solithal Thomas was shot by Latrell Gross. Prosecutor Paul Butlow told a jury trying Thomas and his co-defendant a year later, Solithal Thomas got his revenge with 6 gunshot wounds. At the trial, Gross's cousin, who had named Itchy Man, changed his story, leaving prosecution without a witness or physical evidence to tie them to the murder. Itchy Man and his co-defendant were acquitted. Itchy Man's probation ended September 19th, 2001. The next night, several patrons at the Royal Casino in the 1500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue were robbed and one was shot. Itchy Man was arrested in late October and charged with attempted murder, robbery, assault, and several handgun counts for the Royal Casino crimes. A district court judge released him on $150,000 bail. Police were outraged that he was back on the street. He was arrested on New Year's Day and charged with 2 counts of possessing a bulletproof vest illegally. He told arresting officers that he would continue to wear the vest because he had been shot recently. Prosecutors offered him a deal, plead guilty to the vest charges, and they would drop the attempted murder and robbery case. Judge Roger W. Brown said he would sentence Itchy Man to 6 years in prison. At the last minute, Thomas turned down the deal, even after his lawyer, Meade, told him in open court, "I will tell you, based on my dealings with this court, that offer will not be available in the future." He is expected to go to trial soon. After 14 serious charges, 12 being attempted murders and 2 being murders, with no real time served and no convictions, Itchy Man was feeling invincible. But eventually, the pendulum would swing back the other way, as he would get brought into a murder for hire plot by a guy that went by the name of Tyrese Stewart. Tyrese Stewart would confess that him and a guy that went by the name of Corey Smith paid Itchy Man and 2 other guys $10,000 to kill a guy named Terry Cheeks. In retaliation for killing the friend of Stewart, Albert Dunbar, Terry Cheeks was shot 15 times. Stewart also testified that he hired Itchy Man to kill a guy that went by the name of Jesse Williams, a guy that had robbed Stewart back in 1999. Itchy Man will be tried and convicted on July 6, 2006 on 5 counts relating to his participation in a 2001 murder for hire. On October 27, 2006, he will receive a life sentence plus 10 years in a federal penitentiary. And I think that what we can learn from the story of Itchy Man is this. Itchy Man was the type of guy that would do anything anywhere. He really had no self-discipline. He really never thought about what he did, he just did it. Itchy Man's strong point was the fact that he was crazy and he would do it anywhere. This would make a lot of people scared of Itchy Man. But at the end of the day, once you do something and you get away with it and you do it again and you get away with it again, you can become addicted to that in what you're doing. It gets to the point where it's not about the lick. It's not about the money. It's about the adrenaline. It's about the high of doing whatever it is that you're doing. And at that point, you become addicted. And after you become addicted, you'll never stop. And then once you never stop, you'll eventually be caught. Also, the streets are a place where nothing or no one loves you. If you convince yourself to trust people and let them close to you to kill you or rob you, then in all actuality, you deserved it because you did it to yourself. If you're gonna play the street game, you gotta play it right. You gotta use your head. Never forget, this is chess, not checkers. And never forget about your future. You don't want to never get this far and end up doing the rest of your life in a prison cell. Itchy Man thought he was untouchable. The police proved him wrong. And as for the murder homes,
are you ready? Then, shortly after 10 a.m., the countdown begins. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1!
It may be gone, but it's still in our hearts. It's still in our hearts.
Part of history, part of the city. It's nice to have improved.
This has been another episode of International Stepperz. It's your boy, SNTV.